Hello and welcome back to another video. Today we are talking about all the books I read in 2023, which is these 24. This is going to be a very chill video, so you can go grab your coffee or your hot chocolate or just a glass of water and just chill, hang out with me and just talk about some books and nerd with you, honestly, about some of the fantasies I read, which I love, some of the genres. I'm going to give you some stats. I actually really like this tower of books. Maybe I might keep it like that, just push them out a little bit. Perfect. Don't we love this? All the books. Isn't that lovely? We're gonna first start off with some stats that I have for you. So I'm just gonna pull out the stats that I have. In 2023, I actually read 24 books, which is super cool. I definitely felt that I am obviously back in my reading era, but I didn't think that I would have read 2 books a month. That's actually quite a lot, I feel like, especially because the books I usually read are pretty long, hefty, extensive books. So I'm actually really surprised and really proud to have read that many books. I'm actually kind of bummed that it wasn't 23. 23 books in 2023. And I have read 10,644 pages, which is insane. 10,000 pages, that is pretty hefty in my opinion. So definitely proud of that as well. That's really cool. Also, how cute is my little outfit? It's matchy. Isn't that adorable? As for moods, as you can see, it's mostly adventurous and mysterious and emotional, which I think was really interesting. That's not what I would have thought it was gonna be, honestly. And I thought it would be more a little bit lighthearted, that kind of stuff. But I feel like lighthearted is usually something that's associated with romance, and I don't read a lot of romance at all. So I guess that does make sense. Next up, we have pace. So I think that's really accurate. And page number, as I said, most of the books that I read are pretty hefty. So for me, it does make sense that 71% of the books I read are 300 to 500 pages, because that's usually I feel like what I go for, so that definitely does make sense. 92% fiction, obviously that's not surprising at all. I mean, I just love fiction and I really do prefer it over non-fiction, so that does make sense. And I am obviously not surprised with the fact that we have fantasy as my top genre. I am, though, very surprised that thriller is my second most read genre. Very interesting. Also young adult. It's last year I was definitely more so reading, actually more so of the classics, kind of, and only this year have I really discovered reading only as pleasure, because I used to be I'm only gonna read non-fictional, informative, or really high quality, whatever that's supposed to mean, high quality classic books. But this year I was just full on reading for pleasure. So I think it's actually really nice that I have some young adult up there, because it's just young adult is just so fun. So that was it for the stats. And if you have seen any of my other reading videos, you might know that I'm a really cheap reader. Because I do read so fast, I don't like to buy books for a super expensive price and then have them in my home and just read them in 3 days and then kind of be done with them. So I would always want to try to borrow books from the library, from friends, from the free library kind of things that are scattered around the neighborhood. I actually bought a lot of books secondhand this year, which is obviously super cheap. I got this book, which is not a book I've read. It's just there for the 24 books for the thumbnail. It's called Cru Prince, which I want to read next year. This I bought for €1. Yeah, that's why I don't have all of the books with me. I'm just gonna show you physically as many as I obviously have. The first book that I've read at the beginning of the year, which was still back in Hawaii, which is crazy to me that I started last year in Hawaii. I don't know, it feels like it was yesterday, but at the same time it was so long ago. So anyway, the first book that I read is Origin by Dan Brown. And if you have not ever read a Dan Brown book, then I need to tell you, you need to do it right away. The next book you're gonna read is a Dan Brown book, because he is just the absolute king. Actually, this is a thriller, now that I think of it. He's just the absolute king of thrillers, and he does have a series. I'm not too sure if it does have an actual series name, but he does have a series, kind of. It's interconnected standalones, kind of, that all follow Robert Langdon, which is a professor, and he basically goes on these thriller mystery adventures using his brain power and his knowledge to solve whatever is happening. The other books in the series are Angels and Demons, The Da Vinci Code, The Lost Symbol, Inferno, and then Origin is the last one. So I was actually really sad this is gonna be the last Robert Langdon book, because his character and his knowledge and everything that he encompasses is just his values, and all of it is just absolutely insane. I feel like he's such an intelligent person, because the things he knows and discovers and unveils for you in this book, you read this book and you feel like you have learned something. It's still fun, so if you want to have a really interesting, it kind of gives a historical thriller fiction feel, definitely Dan Brown, really good book. This is a straight solid 4 stars. I think all of Dan Brown's books for me is a 4 star, so love this one. The next book, which I kind of flew through, is actually The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. This was actually really interesting because it just deals with the concept of how can you delegate more work or automate more work so that you have shorter work hours yourself, but you still get the same amount of productivity and like the same amount of work done, which I thought was really interesting. Obviously it's very business savvy and it's very business heavy, but it was definitely informative. Some of it I just honestly skipped over because it wasn't really hands-on for my specific business type that I'm, you know, trying to do here. Definitely interesting book if you want to know more about how to automate your work processes. The next book, which I also unfortunately don't have with me, but I actually really enjoyed, even though it was a romance, is November 9th by Colleen Hoover. Obviously, I feel like all the Colleen Hoover books are definitely books that I could read, that I could enjoy, but it's definitely not up on my list because they're just fun to read, they're just easy to fly through, but they're also they don't really give me a lot of satisfaction if I read them. Like, if you gave me a Colleen Hoover book, I would read it, but I would never, you know, like spend any money on it or spend too much time on it. But I did enjoy it, and I don't think I have to tell you what November 9th is about because you'd probably know if you're watching this video. And I actually gave it a 4 stars, so I did enjoy it. I want to say maybe 3.5 because that's just not my genre, but I did enjoy it. I did have a good time, and I wanted to know how it ended. The next book is Homo Deus by Yuval Harari. I'm not too sure if I'm saying this right, and this is kind of the second book in his Homo whatever little series. The first one was called Homo Sapiens, which basically is a non-fiction book which deals with the scientifical, evolutionary, social, societal change that the human species went through. So it's more history, science, and it was more so based on what has happened so far, and like the agricultural revolution, the industrial revolution, all of that. And then Homo Deus went further, so we went into present time, how especially media and science and technology has affected our lives, and how he kind of goes on an outlook on what's gonna happen or what might happen in the future with just our species in general, considering, you know, how old we're gonna be and how much technology is gonna enter and has already entered in our life. It's just kind of felt like a huge essay, which obviously if you're not into informative reading, I really enjoyed it. I loved Homo Sapiens. I gave it like 5 stars. Honestly, one of the most amazing books I've ever read. I really enjoyed it. Homo Deus, not so much, because sometimes it was just a little bit abstract, and I really enjoyed more of the biological things that happened to our species and how we evolved from that, rather than how technology is going to affect us going on forwards. But still great book, 4 stars or 3.5 stars depending on if you like the genre, I would say. If you're interested in it, definitely do give it a go. Next up, we have The Midnight Library by Matt Haig, I believe. I really also did enjoy the concept of the book. A friend of mine actually gave it to me to read, and I thought the idea was super interesting because it's basically about a girl who is on the edge of suicide, and then she's sent into the Midnight Library where she can basically see and live out how her life would have been differently if she would have done things differently in her life. Like, she could have been an Olympic swimmer, or could have had a farm, or moved to Australia, like all these different things that she thought she had missed out in her life, and she is now able to experience them and learn from them and learn through them and obviously grow and develop through them. I really enjoyed the concept. I really liked the idea. I think it was executed nicely. The writing was good. However, I'm rather an anxious person than I am an like easily depressed person, and it was obviously, that book was obviously dealing with depression, which I think is really important. That is more so represented in culture and in media. However, honestly made me so sad. Like, reading this book, I felt depressed for myself, even though she was about to like go through her depression. So for me, technically, I did enjoy it. I only gave it 3 stars because it did make me feel kind of which, yeah, it's just not something I enjoy. I would really recommend this book, and it deals with really interesting topics. So interestingly enough, after that, I read another Colleen Hoover, and both of these I found in a free library on Big Island, which is why I took them with me, which is also why I read them. So Confess is also a romance, single mom. She kind of needs to decide what kind of guy she wants, and it's also kind of featuring art and like confessions and, you know, having like secrets, whatever. It was interesting, it was fun. As I said, yet again, another Colleen Hoover book, 3 stars, you know, easy read, but not my thing specifically. Next, I was so shocked by this. I read Little Women by Louise May Alcott, which is a classic, and I do really enjoy classics, and I want to next year get back into reading a lot of classics because I already have read some, but I do really have some that are on my radar that I want to get to next year. And I didn't really expect too much from Little Women. I really enjoy Pride and Prejudice. I haven't read it, but I felt it was giving same vibes because it's obviously in the same kind of era. But I loved Little Women. I am so shocked because basically it's just about like 4 little girls ranging from like, I want to say 11 till 19, and just their everyday life in like Victorian age. They're just, you know, dealing with everyday topics and with everyday desires, and they're hardworking and they are humble and they're trying to do their good in society and be there for their family. But it's, I don't know, it's like, it was so wholesome. It was so satisfying to read because it just felt so cute and like so, like I just wanted to hug them and just enjoy their time with them. Definitely, if you're looking to go into classics at all and you kind of like Pride and Prejudice or maybe Emma or any of those movies, try to read Little Women. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. Great book, actually. Another great book is actually Carrie Soto, and I had a deal with Louise's mom where I chose a book for her in English because she wants to improve her English. I read it before her and I kind of did annotations of some of the words. I translated some, I explained some of the grammatical structures, I had like easy words, good to remember, good to keep in mind, like that kind of thing. And it was so fun to annotate that for her, firstly. Secondly, it was great to read that book, and I did have high hopes for it, honestly, because I just know that Taylor Jenkins Reid is an amazing author, and I am very interested in sports, as you know, because that's what I study and that's just what my realm that I live in most of the time. So I was really interested to be reading about tennis, and it did not let me down. I gave 4.5 stars because I just loved the story. It's basically about a tennis player who was the best tennis player in the world, and then she kind of stopped playing tennis, but then a girl is trying to take all of those titles away from her, and then she goes back and she does a comeback, you know, which is why it's called Carrie Soto's Back. And she does have a Hispanic background, and she has had a really tough childhood, and she's like a very hardworking woman, also very sassy, and just the character herself was amazing. Her dad, absolutely amazing. Love story, really cute. It just ticked all the boxes. It was super interesting, it was super fun, it was super entertaining, it was super fast paced. I just really enjoyed Carrie Soto's Back a lot. Then, the thickest book I read this year is World Without End, and it has 1,024 pages. Isn't that crazy? Let that sink in. And that book, honestly, I don't know what Ken Follett puts in his books. I have also read the first one in the series. It's called Pillars of the Earth. It's like a historical fiction kind of thing where it basically deals with building a cathedral, and this World Without End deals with rebuilding the bridge that's next to the cathedral and also kind of rebuilding the cathedral a little bit. And it just follows, I want to say like 30, 40, 50, 60 years of people's lives in that village that are next to the cathedral. It's called Kingsbridge. It's just super interesting because it has a lot of drama, it has a lot of intrigue, it has a lot of also violence because it's kind of medieval vibes. So it's kind of like Game of Thrones but zero fantasy, which I know I love fantasy, and I was like not really intrigued in the first place, but when I started reading it, I don't know what Ken Follett puts in his books. It's just so addictive and it's just so good, and you want to read 1,000 pages about how a freaking bridge is built. Please don't ask me why. If you're at all interested in that, definitely do check it out. It's a great book, and I think there is a third one to that little series, and I will definitely read it at some point because it's just like there's always great love stories, there's always hardship, there's always friendship, there's always drama, as I said, there's always intrigue, there's always a power play involved. I don't know, it's just absolutely amazing books. So it was definitely worth the 1,000 pages. Next up, oh, I don't have this with me because I actually do have my copy. I own a copy of this book, and I not unfortunately, but I gave it to a friend to read, and she is not sure where it is currently, but I'm not worried. I think it's somewhere in her house. We're gonna find it. But that's The Seventh Husband of Evelyn Hugo, and incredible book. Obviously, I'm late to the game. Everybody has probably read this already. Everybody and their mom has read this, honestly. But I just want to say, like, it definitely deserves the hype. Incredible book. I obviously give it 5 stars. The love story And I want to say love story because I usually, as I said, don't like romance, but the love story was incredible. And like the way that you first off go into this book and then you sympathize so hard with the main character and you're like, wow, I really see what she's going through, and then you kind of start to think that it goes this way and then it just completely takes a turn and goes the opposite way. Obviously the whole love story, I don't want to spoil anything for anybody who maybe has not read it. I was just blown away. Like, I loved it. The whole Hollywood scene, the dresses, the vibe, the vintage it gave, the commentary on society as to how somebody should behave and who we should love and all that stuff. Incredible. I just loved it. Taylor Jenkins Reid is an auto-buy author from now on. I also have Daisy Jones and the Six, which I've been dying to read. I haven't read yet. 5 stars. Great book. Next up, we do have a book, finally, that I can hold in my hands, and this is The Silent Patient. The Silent Patient, I thought was interesting. It was definitely thrilling. It was definitely mysterious, and I did enjoy reading it because it's super fast-paced and I flew through it. However, I don't know if it kind of justifies giving us a really high rating if the only thing that really blows me away is the ending. And I do understand that usually in thrillers, it's like build up, build up, build up, build up, build up, and then right at the end there is something thrilling and there is a twist and there is this moment of, oh my god, did this really happen? But I feel like if you took the plot point away, there's not much left. 3 stars, solid thriller, would recommend, easy to read. If you're interested, if you haven't read this, it's basically about a girl who is in an asylum and there's a doctor who is newly assigned to her and he wants to solve the problem of why she doesn't speak because there's something that happened. She was claimed to have killed her husband, but she doesn't speak about it, so he wants to make her talk, and then obviously at the end something comes from it. Interesting, but not super interesting, kind of like, you know, 3 stars, Ooh! This one is really good. The Starlight Sea by Erin Morgenstern. Just the title and the author name gives you the whole vibe of the book, I feel like. The Starlight Sea is a story within a story within a story, which is kind of what threw me off at the beginning, because I was like, what are we reading? Whom are we following? What is happening? But if you, for once, like kind of let go of this, I am in a story and I want to know what's going on, and you just get involved in the book and in what's happening and in the plotline that it's following through, incredible. It was so fun. There's basically this guy who is kind of getting lost in this mystical realism, kind of fantasy, kind of not world of just book lovers. It's kind of like a dying society because magic realism or magic in general is being lost within the normal world, and he just goes on a quest to, I don't even know, to kind of bring back magic, to revive stories. It's just a beautiful book about how important, impactful, and beautiful stories and storytelling is. Within the book, the stories that within the book are being talked about, you're also reading, and they're just beautiful fairy tale stories. I haven't read Once Upon a Broken Heart or the Caraval series, and I think I'm not going to anytime soon because that's just really not my vibe. Like, fairy tales, kind of too cute. I want to have like more adventure, more cool things happening, more dragons, like that kind of stuff. But if you like Once Upon a Broken Heart and the Caraval series, I can honestly 100% say that you're gonna like the Starlight Sea. 100% gives same vibes, with the only exception that I think the Starlight Sea is more intricate, is more built out, and doesn't have a romance. It does have a romance, not a present tense romance. Incredible book. I love this. I honestly think maybe 4.75. Where the Crawdads Sing, or Crawdads? Where the Crawdads Sing, I think, is a super fun, just normal fiction book. I did enjoy the plotline. I did enjoy the reading experience. This follows Kaya, who is basically left alone in a swamp. That sounds so weird, to grow up there kind of without any of her family members. So she kind of is like raised by nature and is kind of learning all the life lessons by herself. She's like taking care of herself, she's growing up by herself, she's cooking for herself, she's trying to make a living for herself, and it deals a lot with loneliness, it deals with growing up, it deals with societal pressures and societal standards. So all of that this talks about is really interesting, and I also love the nature aspect of it. I also really enjoyed the kind of little mystery that was going on right until the end. And there is a love story also, which is honestly, not gonna lie, kind of frustrating. Yeah, I don't know. I did enjoy it, but I'm just such a fantasy girl that I'm like, anything that doesn't involve dragons or magic, I'm like, meh. But if you like fiction, definitely give this a try. I gave this 3.5 stars. Which is not that high, but that's only because I don't like the genre. The book itself was really good. Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney was a great thriller that I really did enjoy. It's basically about a married couple that wants to save its marriage, hence why they go into a snowy mountain castle resort to just see if they can save their marriage and save their relationship. And then as the hours go by, many more things get revealed and many more characters get involved into the story. It got me super dark, creepy vibes, which I think is, interestingly enough, not my thing at all. But I do kind of like the thriller feel, so it's like, at some point I had to put the book away because I was that scared, which is definitely a good thing for a thriller, but then again, I don't really like thrillers. I don't like to be that thrilled, and I cannot read this when I'm on my own, because I read this one night and I could barely sleep. I was like, this is a little bit too scary. But if you like thrillers, as I said, definitely would enjoy this one. Also, there were super interesting plot twists. I feel like there were some in like the middle of the book, but then there were like 10 at the end. Like at the end, I was just like, I had to reread some of the pages because I was like, did this happen? And then this happened, and then this happened, and I was like, damn. Like, it was really cool to see how many layers there are to this plot twist and to the plot points that she made. So definitely 100% would recommend reading this book if you haven't read it already. Finally, again, we have something to hold in our hand. This is a trilogy, obviously, by Carrie Maniscalco, and this is the, I don't know what it's called, Kingdom of the Wicked trilogy. The first book, Kingdom of the Wicked. The second, Kingdom of the Cursed. And the third, Kingdom of the Feared. First of all, who does this and why is this bothering me so much that this is the same size and this is so much smaller? It could be perfect, but it's not, and it this annoys me so bad. But basically, you're following, or you're being introduced to Emilia, who is a witch in Palermo, a city in Italy, if you don't know. She is going to solve the murder of her twin sister, which this is not a spoiler because this literally happens in the second chapter, and she's just trying to unveil and uncover what has happened to her sister, who her sister's murderer is, and along the way, as you might be able to tell from the 3 books that she wrote, there's a lot more that gets unveiled, a lot more that is going to happen. The main characters of this, aside from Emilia, are the 7 princes of hell, which there's also a map in this book. Can we just talk about the fact that any book that has a map is just automatically better than all the other books? So this shows the map of hell, and it basically shows where all the 7 princes reign. So there's the prince for every deadly sin. So there's lust, gluttony, sloth, pride, envy, greed, and wrath. And the prince she gets closely involved with, I want to say, is Wrath. And this in general is just a young adult fantasy romance book series. I have to say that even though this is kind of, I don't want to say it's trashy, it's definitely not trashy. Like, it's definitely well written, it's definitely fun, it's definitely fast paced, it's definitely very entertaining. It's also definitely not closed door. I wouldn't even call this YA, honestly, because there's a lot of stuff going on in this book. It was just pure pleasure. Like, this was just, reading this was just absolute guilty pleasure, and I just really enjoyed this. So if you're looking for fast-paced YA, kind of enemies to lovers, romantasy, then this is your go-to. And yeah, I really did. I have to just say I really did enjoy this, and I would honestly read it again sometime. And I gave all of these 4 stars, which is interesting because I feel like some of these books like this is such good literature. Like, this is really great literature. This is really high quality writing. I give this 3.5 just because I don't like the genre, and then you give me something that's just pure guilty pleasure and I like the genre and I give it 4 stars. That's, I don't know, I feel like that's where ratings fail. But yeah, Kingdom of the Wicked, Cursed, Feared. Gone Girl, an old classic. I feel like this has been really popular in like 2000s, 2010 kind of era. This book is so good. Also thriller, also mysterious, also about a couple who is married and one day the girl in this, which is why it's called Gone Girl, goes missing. The husband is left with trying to find out where she went, and then you kind of get more into their marriage and you see more and you unravel more of what has actually went down, and then you realize that something completely different is happening and it gets super crazy. Like, this book is just super crazy. Meanwhile, the writing is super chill and like it almost kind of feels like you're reading, I want to say like you're reading like a rom-com. Like, it's that really chill vibe of writing, but the stakes are so high and fucked up factor is so high that you're like, what is going on? Super interesting book. Really great scenes also. Like, there are some scenes, the one where Amy, the girl who goes missing, talks about being like the cool girl. If you know, you know. Really great literary piece of work, to be honest. I gave this 4 stars. It did give me the creeps, so I feel like that's a problem with most of the thrillers. I really enjoy reading a good thriller, I really do, because they are, you know, thrilling, they're mysterious, but then it kind of leaves me with like being bummed or being weirded out or kind of like that kind of weird feeling, and I'm like, I don't know if I like it. But yeah, great book. Next up, I do want to talk about Truly Devious, which is a book by Maureen Johnson, and it's a really cute mystery series. I have only started the first one because it was in my library and I thought, why not read it? I thought it was really interesting. It's definitely very YA. It's definitely very low stakes, very chill, and it's basically about a girl who wants to pick up the cold cases of the school she's going to, and it's a boarding school, which there has been many weird things happening in the past, and she kind of wants to unravel them, which is why she goes there, and then she gets involved in a love interest and she finds out interesting things, and she is pulled into the inner workings of the boarding school more than she maybe has planned to. I gave it 3 stars. It was just, you know, easy, cool, chill. I think it's often referred to the Good Girl's Guide to Murder series, which apparently is also super fun, super easy, so enjoyable. Next up, we have Pineapple Street by Jenny Jackson. This book made me feel kind of iffy, to be honest. It's just general fiction, and it's about a super mega rich family in New York doing things that super mega rich people do. It kind of is just like a very chill fiction book about what a family in general is like doing. You're following those characters. It's obviously really character driven, but I feel like at the end of the day, yes, it did talk about, you know, working hard and kind of earning your place in society and earning your right to money, but it's like, I don't know, it made me feel so iffy because it kind of felt like rich people gratifying that they're rich and doing things that rich people do. It honestly did give a little bit of Gossip Girl vibes, so if you do like Gossip Girl and you're like, whatever, I like reading about rich people, then definitely do go for it, because I feel like there is a niche, and like, it's New York, it's very petty, I want to say, if that's the right word, but it just felt wrong. I was like, dude, it felt like rich people gratifying that they're rich, and I was like, no, you know, that's not the reality for 90% of humanity, so like, why? I didn't like it at all. I'm gonna give it 2. The Cru Prince by Holly Black is a really cute, funsy YA fantasy. I definitely do see the hype that it did get. If you have read it, I would love to know actually what you think, because I was like, as a seasoned fantasy reader, I want to call myself, I definitely don't see potential. I think it's easy, I think it's fun, I think it's chill, I think it's cute, but I'm not blown away by it at all. So I think I give it like 3.5 stars, maybe 3 points, maybe 3, maybe just straight up 3 stars, because I don't know, I think it was fun, I think it was cute, the romance was kind of cute, her whole assassin thing was kind of cute, and it's basically about 2 twins who are abducted by a fairy prince and their half-sister to Fairy, which apparently Fairy is just a fairy tale land, which I'm like, no. I don't know, I was like kind of like, the high fantasy girl in me was like, this is just too silly. And then she tries to become an assassin for the king, and then something goes wrong, and she's like also involved in a love interest, and it's giving love triangle vibe. It's also giving enemies to lovers. It's just like, you know, the romanticities. Not my favorite. Now that I'm reviewing these books, I'm realizing that I actually have read quite a few thrillers this year, which is interesting. So this is another thriller. This is called Dark Matter by Blake Crouch? This is really cool because this also deals with a lot of scientific topics, because this basically is a man who is also abducted and then gets shoved into a different reality from his. So it's, you know, talking about multiverses, and he does not in this reality have his family, which he's trying to get back to, and he kind of tries to navigate this machine that they built to travel through the multiverse and find the guy who abducted him in the first place. Yeah, it was really interesting. It was very thrilling. It was super fast-paced. I read this, I was also sick, but I read this in literally 24 hours. So if you're looking for like a really high stakes, really fast-paced, also kind of scientifically added touch kind of thriller, Dark Matter is definitely really cool. Finally, we've made it to our last two books. And finally, I can talk about this because I have considered, and not done so, considered doing a reading vlog of this series. This is the Dark Artificer series by Cassandra Clare, which is in the Shadowhunter world. If you don't know what that is, you need to get onto it, because what are you doing? And these books are so good. I was enjoying this so much, and I read these books while I was super sick at the beginning of the semester, which is also why I flew through these heavy chunky things, because I think each of this has like 600 more. Yeah, this has 660 and this has almost 700 pages. The third one in this series has 860 as well. So all of this is definitely a very chunky series. I haven't talked about this at all, I feel like, because I just haven't talked about books, and I just also full on stopped reading because I just didn't have the time, because I'm that invested in like the gymnastics thing that I'm doing with uni right now. If you haven't seen it, I think the next video after this one is gonna be my week in my life vlog, which then if you watch this, you're gonna see why I don't have time to read, because I just practice and train every single day, I feel like. But yeah, these books, okay, I might be prejudiced a little bit. I might be, you know, pitted towards this author and towards this series a little bit, because I read The Mortal Instruments, which is basically the first series in this whole universe, when I was in school still, and I fell in love because it was the first time that I read like the kind of YA fantasy kind of romance, enemies to lovers, easy world building books. I don't even know how I started this sentence, but yeah, it was the first time I was introduced to Cassandra Clare and like the whole world of, you know, romance, fantasy. Her characters are multifaceted, they're driven, you're super connected to them, you feel like they are your family. There's a found family aspect in every single one of them. The magic system is incredible, because it basically, in this world, there are demons and there are angels, and the shadow hunters are descended from angels, and they fight against demons, and they can kind of draw runes onto their body to enhance their powers and fight better, basically, like have better sight, more strength, more agility, all of that stuff. The magic system is amazing. The characters are always amazing, because Cassandra Clare writes incredible characters. The plot lines are always incredible, and the whole universe is just to die for, to be honest. There are multiple reading orders that you can read these in. I'm gonna link some videos down below, or you can just, you know, Google Cassandra Clare reading order, whatever, and see what comes out and see how you would go about it. I just sincerely loved being back in this world. I immediately felt connected to the characters because they were also introduced right at the end of the first series. I give both of these straight up 4, or I want to even say 4.5 stars. It ticks all the boxes. It's so much fun. It's so enjoyable. It's so endearing. It's so heart aching. It's so, yeah, it's just incredible. And the first one was really fun. The plot was really fun. What I really loved about this, it's that even though it's a huge trilogy and it's so many pages that you read, there's still so much happening. So it's not like this only builds up to this and then this kind of leads into there. There's a whole plot line in the first book and a whole plot line that leaves you satisfied even if you were to just finish this book. Like, you could read this as a standalone and it would be fine, which is what I like about series, because I feel like if you don't have anything to say and if you don't have anything to show for, then why would you create a whole series if nothing is happening? So I really enjoyed that there was a lot happening in this. There was a whole issue resolved and many more opened in this single book, even though it is part of a trilogy. And then the second book tore me apart. The ending of this had me crying. My dad asked me what was going on because I was sitting on the couch finishing this and I just cried my eyes out. He was like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "No, I'm not," because I just finished this book. Also, the interconnectedness of all the books and all the series I cannot wait to finish this and then finally start The Infernal Devices because that's everybody's favorite. And this is the last one. This would have been my 25th book if I would have had the time to continue reading it, because I truly hadn't. In the last, I want to say 6 weeks, I'm on page almost 100 and I cannot wait to finish this at some point. These are all the books that I read in 2023. I really had a great reading year. I had so much fun and I just really enjoyed getting back into reading as a pleasure, as like a thing to do just for pleasure and not for education and not for trying to be sophisticated and not for, you know, reading all the classics, but just thoroughly enjoying a book and just having a good time with it. That was definitely my main goal of this year. And yeah, I would really appreciate if we could nerd about books in the comment section down below. This video is probably going to be so long, so if you're here now, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you. I hope you had fun talking about books with me, and I would really love to know your thoughts about any of these, and if you've read them, if you're planning to read them, if you want any more recommendations. I would really genuinely love to talk to you so much. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye bye.